This is Community Radio Networks. It is Thursday, the 6th of June. And we have all the information that you need to take on this day today. Right here on Community Radio Networks. We'll have your financial news coming in the second segment. And then some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 6th of June, along with your social calendar in the final segment. But right now, in our first segment, let's get you the world news coming up next. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Madgil. Today marks the 80th anniversary of the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France during World War II, the large amphibious assault in history. President Biden and dozens of heads of state attending the commemorations along a 50-mile stretch of northern France. Nearly 200 veterans, whose average age is 100, are also present out there. And President Biden has just spoken. Operation Overlord was the Allies' bid to open up a second front in the war against Nazi Germany. Early on this day in 1944, roughly 13,000 paratroopers parachuted behind entrenched enemy lines ahead of the 135,000 U.S., British, and Canadian soldiers who later landed on the beaches of Normandy. Over 4,400 troops were killed that day, including 2,501 Americans, with over 73,000 lost in the ensuing month-long Battle of Normandy. The invasion, alongside the Soviet Union's push from the east, helped seal the defeat of Nazi Germany a year later. French President Emmanuel Macron also commemorating the roughly 20,000 French civilians killed during the Allied bombardment and the battle. The horrors of World War II are being forgotten, thereby raising the risk of a new global conflict, said Pope Francis in comments marking the 80th anniversary of the 1944 D-Day landings, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France, a turning point in World War II. And Pope Francis said the brutal lessons of the past had fueled a determination among subsequent generations to avoid any new large-scale fighting. People want peace. They want conditions of stability, security, and prosperity where everyone can calmly fulfill their duty and destiny. To destroy this noble order for ideological, nationalist, or economic ambitions is a grave fault before humanity and history, a sin before God. And the D-Day anniversary coming as Ukraine continues to defend its territory from Russia, which launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor in 2022. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Meanwhile, Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani and Egypt's intelligence chief Abbas Kamel met with Hamas leaders in Doha for talks on a Gaza truce. Talks involving Qatari, Egyptian, and U.S. mediators aimed at reaching a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza war, still underway today, but had shown no sign of a breakthrough. The U.S., Britain, Canada, Germany, and several other countries have called on Hamas to accept a proposal announced by President Biden for a permanent ceasefire in the enclave. When President Biden publicly aired a Gaza ceasefire proposal developed by Israel and the U.S. and sent to Hamas, he made the announcement without seeking agreement from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The decision to announce unilaterally, an unusual step for the U.S. to take with a close ally, was deliberate and has narrowed the room for Israel or Hamas to back away from the deal. 6 people, including the alleged gunman, have been arrested in connection with the shooting near the entrance to the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in Lebanon that injured a Lebanese guard. Shots from small arms were heard, according to the embassy. 40 people were killed and 73 wounded in an Israeli attack on the Nusrat school in the Gaza Strip. UNICEF says 9 out of 10 children in Gaza cannot eat nutrients from enough food groups to ensure their healthy growth and development. If the offensive continues unabated, more than 1 million Palestinians in Gaza could suffer the highest level of starvation by the middle of next month. This according to a report by the UN World Health Organization and Food and Agriculture Organization. Lebanese group Hezbollah claims it has struck an Iron Dome air defense system launcher with a missile in northern Israel. Tensions are escalating on the Israel-Lebanon border as the Israeli military warned it was prepared to launch a large-scale attack in the north to deter the Iran-backed Islamist group Hezbollah. The Israeli bombardment in Gaza since the Palestinian fighter group's October 7th attack has revived a global push for Palestinians to be given a state of their own. Slovenia became the latest country to recognize a state of Palestine, breaking with the long-held view of Western powers that Palestinians can only gain statehood as part of a negotiated peace with Israel. And Spain will join South Africa's genocide case before the International Court of Justice against Israel's actions in Gaza, according to its foreign minister. The European Union's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell said he had formally invited Israel's top diplomat to a meeting to discuss ties amid the bombardment in Gaza. Boeing's Starliner astronauts are set to dock at the International Space Station at around noon today, after yesterday marked the company's first successful launch to outer space. Aboard the Starliner capsule are two veteran NASA astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. For the next 8 days, they will join 7 others at the International Space Station and deliver a replacement pump to fix the station's urine processor. That processor is a critical part of NASA's water recovery system, enabling the station to recycle 98% of its water. After a successful launch that was a decade in the making, Boeing's Starline mission navigating new issues en route to the International Space Station, and said late last night that 2 additional helium leaks had been detected on the vehicle. One had been discovered prior to launch and deemed acceptable. Donald Trump returns to the campaign trail today with a trip to Arizona, his first appearance in a battleground state since he was convicted in a hush money scandal. He's scheduled to speak at a town hall in Phoenix organized by Turning Point, a conservative youth organization that has seen its influence rise alongside Trump's takeover of the GOP. The former president's guilty verdict may indeed be hurting him in the polls. In a redo of a recent New York Times poll, Trump's 3-point edge over President Biden before the jury rendered its verdict shrank to just 1 point when respondents were quizzed after the decision. His search for a running mate is intensifying as the former president awaits sentencing on felony charges and prepares for next month's Republican National Convention. The New York City Police Department is preparing to revoke former President Trump's license to carry a gun. And a Georgia appeals court has halted the election subversion conspiracy case against President Trump and several of his co-defendants until a panel of judges rules on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis should be disqualified. Vice President Kamala Harris, the former San Francisco district attorney, arrived at her old stomping ground to raise money for the Biden-Harris re-election campaign and was greeted by more than 100 pro-Palestinian protesters. Her appearance in the Bay Area comes a day before former President Trump is scheduled to attend a fundraising dinner in San Francisco, exactly a week since he was convicted on the 34 felony counts for falsifying records in a scheme to hide hush money payments to a porn actor. She arrived in San Francisco yesterday after an earlier fundraiser at a private home in the Oakland Hills. Prosecutors are expected to rest their case against President Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden today after presenting evidence aimed at showing that he lied about his drug use to illegally buy a gun in 2018. 3 new witnesses took the stand in Hunter Biden's gun trial yesterday, recalling in vivid color the defendant's spiral into drug addiction, foiled attempts at entering rehab, and fateful purchase of a firearm in late 2018, a year when his use of crack cocaine went out of control. Joining Biden for the 3rd day were First Lady Jill Biden, his wife Melissa Cohen Biden, close ally Kevin Morris, and other longtime friends and family members. Details about his relationship with a 24-year-old stripper, his need for crack cocaine every 20 minutes, and now his spiraling addiction torpedoed his first marriage and was on full display for the jury as it considers the first son's 3 felony charges related to the purchase of a revolver in 2018. 2 of Hunter Biden's former romantic partners took the stand also in his federal gun trial, detailing to jurors his years-long drug use and attempts to get sober. The Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks face off in Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight, the first ever postseason matchup between the 2 franchises, and both teams easily won their conference championship, with Dallas dropping the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games and Boston sweeping the Indian Pacers, and both are led by a pair of star players, Dallas's Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, combined for nearly 60 points per game in the conference finals. And FEMA and the Biden administration say 5 more counties in Texas now meet criteria and have been added to a federal disaster declaration. FEMA first approved some parts of Texas for the federal declaration after severe weather in West Texas and the Texas Panhandle. FBI Director Christopher Wray says the U.S. needs a whole lot more from Mexico in order to shut down the cartels and stop the flow of precursors into the U.S., as new president was just elected to serve as the country's top leader. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said his country is seeking an agreement for the U.S. to deport asylum seekers and migrants to their countries of origin instead of Mexico. The announcement comes after President Biden unveiled executive action yesterday that would bar people who cross the U.S.-Mexico border illegally from requesting asylum during periods when there is a high volume of illegal crossings. The U.S. has been tracking Russian warships and aircrafts that are expected to arrive in the Caribbean for a military exercise in the coming weeks in a Russian show of force as tensions rise over Western military support for Ukraine. And Ukraine appears to have used U.S.-supplied weapons on Russian soil in a wave of reported attacks, signaling that a new phase of the war may well be underway. Russian media outlets said that Ukraine fired M42 missiles from M270 and HIMARS rocket launchers, all of which are U.S.-made, over the border into Russia. President Putin warned that Russia could provide long-range weapons to others to strike Western targets in response to NATO allies, allowing Ukraine to use their arms to attack Russian territory. President Putin cautioned the West that Russia could use all available means, including nuclear weapons, to defend itself if its sovereignty or territorial integrity were threatened. In a reply to a question about the Taliban government in Afghanistan, the Russian president said Moscow should build up relations with it. And President Putin said Moscow's forces have captured more than 6,000 Ukrainian prisoners of war since the beginning of the conflict in February of 2022. And it's the time of the year for St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, or the Russian Davos, as it is sometimes called. For years, President Putin's flagship business and investment event has attracted the world's elites, but it is this list of high-profile world leaders that has become substantially shorter since Russia invaded Ukraine, triggering sweeping sanctions against the Putin regime. And this year, the biggest names attending the event include Bolivian president and Zimbabwean president. But the 4-day economic forum, which started yesterday, now also features the children of the Kremlin's top echelons, the Nepo babies in attendance, including Putin's low-profile daughters. President Putin warned Germany against delivering Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. And it is Ukrainian President Zelensky who's traveled to Doha for talks with the Qatari Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the two leaders to discuss Qatar's mediation on the issue of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia during the current conflict. The planet just made this shocking new milestone, enduring 12 consecutive months of unprecedented heat, according to new data from Copernicus, the European Union's climate monitoring service. Every single month from June 2023 to May 2024 was the world's hottest such month on record. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa meeting with senior officials of the African National Congress today to decide how to go about forming a government after the party lost its 30-year grip on power and left a post-election deadlock. The African National Congress leaning towards trying to form a government of national unity for South Africa, but the second largest party said it would not join a government that included some of its smaller rivals. As the European Parliament elections begin today, voters for the members of the parliament are being cast from 6th to the 9th of June across the European Union, but vary by country. The Dutch will kick things off today. This will be followed by Ireland, and then Latvia, Malta, and Slovakia the next day. The Czech Republic and Italy vote across 2 days, on the 7th and 8th and 9th, respectively. And in the rest of the European Union, elections will be held this coming Sunday. The recent floods in Germany's state of Bavaria have affected voters for the European Parliament election, with the number of polling stations forced to relocate and reports of lost voting documents. Residents in the German state of Bavaria are still on alert as severe floods hit the southern region of the country. An activist from Germany's Last Generation Climate Group targeted the office of Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin today, painting the message, "Be honest," on the building. Police said 9 people were involved in this action at the Federal Chancellery, which, according to the Last Generation, was addressed to Scholz directly. German Chancellor wants to allow the deportation of serious criminals to Afghanistan and Syria again. Coco Gauff says she needs to find a better way of playing Iga Swiatek before the pair meet in the French Open semi-finals today. The Polish world number 1, Swiatek, has won 10 of their 11 previous meetings, including the past 3 and 2 matches at the Roland Garros, the 2022 final and a quarter-final a year later. Turkey's foreign minister urging Chinese authorities to protect the cultural rights of minority Muslim Uyghurs in China's western Xinjiang province and allow them to live their values. More than 1,000 people gathered in Taiwan's capital of Taipei to commemorate the victims of China's violent suppression of the Tiananmen Square pro-democracy protests in 1989, urging the Beijing regime to stop trampling on human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on community radio networks. And Indonesia's Mount Ibu erupted 3 times today, spewing red lava and clouds of gray ash, and no injuries were reported. UFO sightings should not be dismissed out of hand because they could in fact be surveillance drones or weapons, say Japanese lawmakers who launched a group today to probe that matter. And a spokesman for Myanmar's military government denied accusations that army troops and their local allies killed 76 people when they entered a village last week in the western state of Rakhine, which has become a focal point of Myanmar's nationwide civil war, in which pro-democracy guerrillas and ethnic minority armed forces battled the country's military rulers, who took power in 2021 after the army ousted the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. India's bruised and battered opposition was largely written off in the lead-up to the national election as too weak and fragmented to take on Prime Minister Modi and his powerful party. It scored a stunning comeback, slowing the Modi juggernaut and pushing his BJP well below the majority mark. It's uncharted territory for the populist Prime Minister, who needs the help of his allies now to stay in power, and that could significantly change his governance style after he enjoyed a commanding majority in Parliament for a decade. The election results yesterday marked a revival for the main opposition Congress party and its allies, who defied predictions of decline and made deep inroads into governing party strongholds, resetting India's political landscape. And the opposition won a total of 232 seats out of 543. The election battle between Narendra Modi and the India group, his ideology, as well as the India ideology. The election results showed his messaging worked with the voters, as his party made substantial gains in BJP-governed states such as Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, and Maharashtra by tapping into economic stress, and it won 99 seats across India, and that is the opposition. Prime Minister Modi preparing today to be sworn in for a 3rd term after an unexpectedly close election that forced his party into a coalition government. His BJP, which had ruled for the past decade with an outright majority, had been expecting another landslide win, but the results ran counter to the exit polls, seeking the BJP lose its majority and sending it into quick-fire talks to lock in a 15-member coalition that would allow it to govern. Commentators and exit polls had projected that overwhelming victory for Modi, who critics have accused of leading the jailing of opposition figures and trampling on the rights of India's 200 million-plus Muslim community. It is Congress Party President Mallikarjun Kharge who said the result was a vote against Modi and the substance and style of his politics. His setback reflected concerns about what the idea of India meant to voters against a backdrop of rise of animosities and polarization in society, people's concern about rights, and the steeply rising inequalities. While Modi faces a more complicated political environment at home, he won the plaudits of leaders from around the world. President Joe Biden congratulated him on his coalition's victory, and the State Department said that the U.S. hoped to work with him and a free and open Asia. China congratulated Modi and said it was ready to work with its neighbor, while the coalition's win also was applauded by Britain's Rishi Sunak, European Union Chief Charles Michel, Russia, and Japan. It is Rahul Gandhi who had stepped down as the Congress president after the party's drubbing in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, and now with 99 seats in the Lok Sabha amid a strong showing by the India bloc in the general election, the Congress is now entitled to claim the post of leader of opposition in parliament, and as a result, clamours are growing louder for Rahul Gandhi to take up the coveted post. The Congress party attacked the BJP after statues of Mahatma Gandhi, B.R. Ambedkar, and Chhatrapati Shivaji and others were relocated within the premises of Parliament. Congress party slamming this relocation. Hectic discussions underway for Narendra Modi's anticipated third term. BJP leaders Amit Shah and Rajnath Singh are at the party president JP Nadda's residence in Delhi, and all BJP MPs and chief ministers have been called to Delhi for a meeting tomorrow. Prime Minister Modi submitted his resignation to President Draupadi Murmu and set to take the oath for the third term, likely on Sunday, after coalition partners assure their support. After the India bloc meeting yesterday, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge thanked the people for their support and said that the India bloc would continue to fight against the BJP's fascist rule under Prime Minister Modi. We also have the BJP's key ally Nitish Kumar's Janata Dal calling for a review of the centre's Agniveer scheme for recruitment to defence forces. And this comes as the Lok Sabha election results declared have restricted the BJP to just 240 seats. The Agnipath scheme recruits youngsters aged 17 and a half to 21 for a 4-year term with an option to retain 25% of them for an additional 15 years. Prime Minister Modi, elected as leader of the National Democrat Alliance, but uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Two crucial conditions have surfaced on the wish list of Modi's strongly independent allies whose support he needs to shore up his minority government. And the demands, if pressed, would bear resemblance to the UK Chartist movement, which aimed to overthrow King, Queen and Parliament, but there it seems more rooted in real politics than the British legend was. We do have reports of Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister in waiting Chandrababu Naidu demanding the Lok Sabha Speaker's job for his party. There is also talk of alliance members being anxious over Modi's preference for fellow Gujarati right-hand man Amit Shah as Home Minister. What must be worrying for Mr. Modi is that the Janata Dal United of Bihar and the Telugu Desam Party of Andhra Pradesh have been and are close to several regional leaders that are members of the opposition India group. Meanwhile, India's batters have the skill and experience needed to navigate the challenge of playing on a tricky pitch in New York, according to batting coach Vikram Rathore. After their 2020 World Cup victory over Ireland yesterday, India's captain Rohit Sharma led from the front with an impressive half-century to guide his team to an 8-wicket victory over Ireland in their opening group match. And the stadium in New York has seen few runs in the 2 World Cup games it has hosted so far, with South Africa defeating Sri Lanka by 6 wickets after dismissing their Asian opponents for their lowest ever T20 score of 77. And the captain Babar Azam said Pakistan held an edge over other teams in unfamiliar conditions in the US for the ongoing ICC T20 World Cup, underlining that some of the current team members had already played cricket in the United States. The next match at the stadium will see Canada taking on Ireland tomorrow before India and Pakistan face off this Sunday. Pakistan is poised to secure a record 8th term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council in today's election. All UN member nations are currently engaged in the process of filling 5 non-permanent seats on the 15-member Security Council. And among the contenders are Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama, and Somalia, with each regional group representing a single candidate in this uncontested race known as a clean slate. We do have the Federal Investigation Agency in Karachi arresting human rights activist and philanthropist Sareem Birni when he arrived at Karachi airport from abroad for his alleged involvement in child trafficking by way of illegal adoption on the complaint of U.S. authorities. An FIA official said that the anti-human trafficking of the FIA Karachi registered a case against him, and also there have been many other cases previously. The Islamabad High Court had stayed the execution of 5 ex-Navy officers who were previously sentenced to death through a general court-martial decree. IHC's Justice Babar Sattar issued a written order for the hearing on the request of Navy officers who said they were not provided legal assistance during the general court-martial order. At least 3 people died and 12 were injured early this morning when a passenger coach erupted into flames after colliding with a motorcycle in Balochistan Lasbela district, and after local authorities uprooted protesters' camps and opened the Quetta-Chaman highway in the early hours of yesterday. Participants of a sit-in ransacked the deputy commissioner's office in response, resulting in 7 arrests. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. I do have financial news coming up in just a minute. Stay with us right here. Let's get you all the financial news that you need to know for today. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is Thursday, the 6th of June. U.S. equity futures are mixed in early trading today, following on from another set of record highs on Wall Street last night as big tech stocks continue to power broader market gains and investors extend bets on an autumn Fed rate cut. NVIDIA's last day surge lifted the AI chip and processor maker past the $3 trillion mark last night, with its record high close taking it past Apple Apple and to within touching distance of Microsoft as the world's most valuable company. Global tech shares powered higher today, with Nvidia Corporation set to build on its $3 trillion market capitalization as expectations of interest rate cuts add to the ongoing frenzy around artificial intelligence. Shares of Nvidia climbed more than 5% yesterday, reaching a record high of 1,224.40 and giving the company a market cap above $3 trillion for the first time ever. The stock's advance has pushed Nvidia past Apple, making it the second most valuable company in the U.S. stock market, and Microsoft currently holds that top spot. And yesterday's rally came amid a broader gain in tech stocks after softer U.S. economic data and a decline in Treasury yields, boosting markets on hopes the Federal Reserve may cut rates as early as July. Intel and AMD are staring down a new competitor in the PC market, ARM. The UK-based chip designer is making a fresh push into the space via Qualcomm and its ARM-based Snapdragon X Elite and X Plus chips, which are rolling out in laptops from companies ranging from ASUS and Acer to Dell, HP, and Lenovo in the coming weeks. An artificial intelligence model developed by Microsoft can accurately forecast weather and air pollution for the whole world, and it does it in less than a minute. The model is called Aurora, is one of a slew of AI weather forecasting tools being developed by tech giants, including GraphCast from Google DeepMind in London and ForecastNet from NVIDIA, based in Santa Clara, California. But Aurora's ability to quickly predict air pollution globally is pioneering, according to researchers. Lululemon stock rose almost 10% in pre-market trading today after the company boosted its full-year profit outlook and raised its stock repurchase program by $1 billion. Dan Amos has been at the helm of insurance giant Aflac for more than 34 years, making him one of the longest-serving CEOs in the Fortune 500. He has also presided over an incredible 1,500% plus return on the company's stock, which is celebrating its 50th year of being listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And at the same time, the annual revenue has been on the decline since 2019 amid a general decline in supplemental health insurance, and as its largest external market, Japan, also shows signs of slowing. Dollar Tree has disclosed it is exploring a potential sale or spin-off of Family Dollar as the company struggles with weak consumer demand. And while it may not be as cheap as some jokes would suggest, Family Dollar is back on the market less than a decade after Dollar Tree acquired the chain. Family Dollar currently operates around 8,000 stores in the United States, offering low-priced items to shoppers, typically ranging from $1 to $10. And in recent years, the chain has struggled, putting a strain on Dollar Tree's acquisition of the company, resulting in more than 900 store closures last year alone. Hiring by U.S. private employers slid to a 4-month low last month, with small frame reducing staff and wage gains for job changers moderated for a second month, according to this report that added to signs the job market is cooling. The Justice Department and the FTC are nearing an agreement to divvy up investigations of potential anti-competitive conduct by some of the world's largest technology companies in the artificial intelligence industry. As part of the arrangement, the Department of Justice is poised to investigate NVIDIA and its leading position in supplying the high-end semiconductors underpinning AI computing, while the FTC is set to probe whether Microsoft and its partner OpenAI have unfair advantages with the rapidly evolving technology, particularly around the technology used for large language models. And the three companies have been leaders in AI, with the technology-powered NVIDIA today to a $3 trillion market value, second only to Microsoft. Make America Great Again, the super PAC backing former President Donald Trump's re-election campaign, reported it raised nearly $70 million last month, despite Trump's felony conviction. And Donald Trump is set for a major stop in the 2024 money race today when he travels to Silicon Valley for a high-profile fundraiser co-hosted by investor David O. Sachs and venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya. The NAACP has threatened to reinstate a travel ban on American Airlines after the company removed 8 black men from a flight last month when a white flight attendant complained an unidentified passenger had body odor. The civil rights organization issued a travel advisory for their airline, warning African American passengers to exercise caution after multiple reports of discrimination in 2017. At that time, the organization cited 4 alarming incidents that seemed to show Black Americans were subjected to disrespectful, discriminatory, or unsafe conditions when booking or boarding with the airline. American Airlines responded by instituting a diversity, equity, and inclusion panel, and the NAACP lifted its ban in 2018. But amid growing politicization, American Airlines Council was disbanded last year. 4 U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers have been recognized for their quick thinking when a traveler at the DFW International Airport suffered a medical emergency. Customs officials say their efforts helped save the man's life. He was returning to the U.S. from a trip to Australia when he collapsed inside the Federal Inspection Station at the airport. He had no pulse and was unresponsive. But the officers, 4 of them, used an automated external defibrillator to try to revive him. A group of financial firms and investors is planning to launch a Texas-based private market stock exchange and offer traders an alternative to the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. The group, which includes BlackRock, Citadel Securities, and about 24 investors, raised approximately $120 million of capital to create the Texas Stock Exchange, which would be headquartered in Dallas. They are now seeking registration with the U.S. SEC to operate as a national securities exchange later this year. To get to one of the best bars in the nation, you first have to walk through a tiny coffee shop on Jefferson Boulevard in Dallas. Tucked away inside Zaman Cafe in Oak Cliff, you'll find the even smaller Ayahuasca Cantina, which was recently highlighted in Esquire's list of the 42 best bars in America. It opened in 2020 and features a full menu of food and drinks inspired by Mexico City. Per the Dallas Morning News, some of the food offerings include pork confit with salsa verde, bone marrow ribeye tacos, and a new addition, the Fidio Seco con croqueta cobernator, or red snapper tacos. As for cocktails, the co-owner is most proud of this drink called Ayahuasca, which is a drink made with mezcal, ginger, lime, and tepache, a fermentation made from pineapple, anise, and cinnamon, located on Jefferson Boulevard in Dallas. And a family in Texas got a bit more than they bargained for on a wildlife tour when a hungry giraffe plucked a 2-year-old girl straight out of their pickup truck. It was right here in Fort Worth, southwest, about 60 miles southwest of Fort Worth, actually, when this giraffe decided to get up close out there during a drive-through safari at the Fossil Rim Wildlife Center. American Airlines wants to start a new daily flight between San Antonio and Washington, which would connect the 7th largest U.S. city to the D.C. airport. Alaska Airlines is seeking a new daily flight to Reagan from San Diego, the largest market without direct flights to the D.C. airport, while Spirit Airlines wants a new direct flight daily to San Jose, California. Delta Airlines plans to announce today it'll apply for a new flight between Seattle and Washington Reagan National Airport as airlines battle over 5 new daily flights. With multiple U.S.-based airlines spending 2022 and 2023 reworking networks to run more flights to smaller European cities popular with tourists, many are now seeking opportunities in other continents and previously overlooked countries. Earlier this year, Oslo-based airline Norse Atlantic launched the world's first low-cost flight between London and Cape Town, while Delta Air announced new routes to Ghana and South Africa that it will start running from the East Coast at the end of 2024. Setting its sights on another part of the world, Canada's flagship carrier Air Canada just announced that it plans to grow its service to India from different Canadian cities by 40% in the 2024-25 season. In practical terms, this means introducing a new non-stop route between Toronto and Mumbai in October of this year, as well as connecting its existing flights to London from Vancouver and Calgary with ongoing flights to New Delhi. Telespazio, a joint venture between Italian defense and aerospace group Leonardo and French peer Thales, has signed an agreement with Elon Musk's SpaceX to commercialize the services of its satellite unit, Starlink. SpaceX's Starlink owns around 60% of the roughly 7,500 satellites orbiting Earth and is a dominant player in the satellite internet sphere. The Bank of Canada trimmed its key policy rate, the first G7 country to do so, in a widely expected move that will ease pressure on highly indebted consumers, but indicated further easing could be gradual and dependent on data. Barcelona restaurant Disfrutar was named today as the best in the world by the influential 50 Best list in a year dominated by Spanish and Latin American restaurants. Disfrutar, which means enjoy in Spanish, opened in December 2014 next to the Nino market in the heart of the Catalan city. 50 Best, run by British magazine Restaurant, describes it as having far-reaching technique, original thinking, and groundbreaking flavors, run by 3 chefs who trained at the renowned El Bulli in Roses, Spain, which has topped the 50 Best list 5 times, including the first ever in 2002. A Spanish eatery took second place in the Basque town of Atzcondo, and third place went to Table de Bruno Verhus in Paris, among the most expensive in the French capital. They received their awards at a ceremony in Las Vegas. Banknotes featuring King Charles III entered circulation in the UK. The Bank of England said he's only the second monarch after his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, to appear on banknotes issued by the Bank of England. It is also the first time the bank has changed the monarch on its notes. His portrait appears on notes of 5, 10, 20, and 50 pounds. Meanwhile, the rest of the design will remain the same as the current notes that feature the late Queen Elizabeth II on their fronts. Japan's birth rate fell to a new low for the 8th straight year last year, and a government official described this situation as critical and urged authorities to do everything they can to reverse the trend. The data underscores Japan's long-standing issues of a rapidly aging and shrinking population, which has serious implications for the country's economy and national security, especially against the backdrop of China's increasingly assertive presence in the region. Nepal's abundant hydroelectric power is helping the Himalayan nation cut its oil imports and clean up its air thanks to a boom in sales of electric vehicles. Nearly all of the electricity produced in Nepal is clean energy, most of it generated by river-fed hydroelectricity. Thanks to that abundant source of power, the country is quickly expanding charging networks, and imports of EVs have doubled in each of the past 2 years. Nepal Electricity Authority estimates use of EVs has reduced oil import costs by $22 million a year, and the savings are increasing. Indian stocks capped their biggest 2-day gain in more than 3 years as Prime Minister Modi won backing from 2 key allies to form a government. The NSE Nifty 50 index rose 0.9%, extending yesterday's 3% rally as the benchmark continued to recoup losses following the shock election result that saw Modi's party losing its majority in parliament. The broader market outperformed, with a gauge of smaller companies rallying 3.3%. Investors will be closely watching who will be appointed to key cabinet portfolios and whether the coalition's policies align with the previous administration's focus on boosting infrastructure and manufacturing. Leaders of the BJP-led NDA, including Nitish Kumar of the Janata Dal and N. Chandrababu Naidu of the Telugu Desam Party, agreed to back Modi after reaching an accord in New Delhi. The renewed interest among likely heads of various ministries comes as investors assess the likely concessions that Modi may have to make in a coalition government. Wasn't immediately clear what demands were made by the two leaders and to what the BJP agreed in order to secure their support. And besides yesterday's upward move in stocks, institutional flows offer some caution for now. Foreign investors dumped $1.5 billion worth of Indian equities and extended the sell-off by another $678 million yesterday. Pakistan and China have signed 32 memorandums of understanding to promote trade and investment between the two countries, signed during Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to China as he leads a team of 100 businessmen to explore the potential of promoting bilateral trade and investment. In emphasizing the need for business-to-business cooperation between the two countries, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif assured Chinese investors and their investment-oriented projects of all-out facilitation and foolproof security in Pakistan. He was addressing the Pakistan-China Business Forum in Shenzhen on the second day of his China visit. And the Pakistan Stock Exchange and the Pakistan Stockbrokers Association have expressed concerns over high capital market taxation and demanded its rationalization in their budget proposals. The State Bank of Pakistan Governor Jameel Ahmed chaired the first steering committee meeting to implement priority sector initiatives recommended by the Pakistan Banks Association. And braving the highest ever electricity tariff, hapless consumers seeking installments to pay heavy bills because of financial difficulties are now legally bound to pay a 14% markup on delayed payments and will be disqualified from subsequent part payment facilities for a year. And more than 2 months after a mishap that led to the complete shutdown of the 969 megawatt Neelam Jhelum hydropower project, the exact cause and veracity of the problem remains unknown till today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you today, but I do have the final segment of our program coming up for you in just a minute. This now is the final segment of our program today, and it is Thursday, the 6th of June. Let's get you first some interesting stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. In Ellicott's Mills in Maryland, President Andrew Jackson boards a Baltimore and Ohio railroad train for a pleasure trip to Baltimore. He had never been on a train before, was the first president to take a ride on the Iron Horse, as locomotives were known then. Happened on today's date in the year 1833. The steam locomotive was first pioneered in England at the beginning of the 19th century, and the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad began operation in 1828 with horse-drawn cars. But after the successful run of the Tom Thumb, a steam train that nearly outraced a horse in a public demonstration in 1830, steam power was added. And by 1831, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad had completed a line from Baltimore to Frederick, Maryland. 2 years later, Andrew Jackson gave railroad travel its presidential christening, and the acceptance of railroads came quickly in the 1830s, and by 1840, the nation had almost 3,000 15,000 miles of railway, greater than the combined European total of only 1,800 miles. And the network expanded quickly in the years before the Civil War, and by 1860, the American railroad system had become a national network of some 30,000 miles. 9 years later, transcontinental railroad service became possible for the first time. But it was on today's date in the year 1833 that President Andrew Jackson boarded the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad train for a pleasure trip to Baltimore and gave railroad travel its presidential christening. And on today's date in 1889, a fire ignites in a Seattle woodworking shop and sweeps through some 100 acres, destroying much of the city's business district and waterfront. The Great Seattle Fire culminated in losses estimated at $20 million and serves as a turning point in the city's history. That was the Great Seattle Fire on the 6th of June in 1889. More than 600 of the city's civic leaders and businessmen gathered to discuss how best to rebuild, and Seattle's first comprehensive building code was passed, requiring structures within the fire zone to be constructed with brick or stone instead of wood. Seattle then emerged more modern and resilient, with 465 new buildings and a population increase of more than 30% within a year of that fire. On the 6th of June in 1933, eager motorists parked their automobiles on the grounds of Camden Drive-In, the first ever drive-in movie theater located on Admiral Wilson Boulevard in New Jersey. Park-in theaters, the term drive-in came to be widely used only later, was the brainchild of Richard Hollingshead, a movie fan and a sales manager at his father's company, Whiz Auto Products in Camden. Reportedly inspired by his mother's struggle to sit comfortably in traditional movie theater seats, he came up with the idea of an open-air theater where patrons watch movies in the comfort of their own automobiles. And that was the first drive-in movie theater that opened on today's date in 1933. On the 6th of June in 1944, Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight Eisenhower gives the go-ahead for the largest amphibious military operation in history, Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of northern France, commonly known as D-Day. And by daybreak, 18,000 British and American parachutists were already on the ground. An additional 13,000 aircrafts were mobilized to provide air cover and support for this invasion. American troops came ashore at Utah and Omaha beaches. The British and Canadians overcame light opposition to capture Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. So did the Americans at Utah. And by the day's end, 155,000 Allied troops, Americans, British, and Canadians, had successfully stormed Normandy's beaches and were then able to push inland. Within 3 months, the northern part of France would be freed, and the invasion force would be preparing to enter Germany, where they would meet up with Soviet forces moving in from the east. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was D-Day on today's date, the 6th of June in 1944. And though D-Day did not go off exactly as planned, as later claimed by British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, the Allies were able to land only fractions of the supplies and vehicles they had intended in France. The invasion was a decided success. By the end of June, the Allies had 850,000 men and 150,000 vehicles in Normandy and were poised to continue their march across Europe. The heroism and bravery displayed by troops from the Allied countries on D-Day has served as inspiration for several films, most famously The Longest Day, Saving Private Ryan, also depicted in the HBO series Band of Brothers in 2001. Today, ladies and gentlemen, D-Day being recognized right there in France, as we have mentioned in the world news. And many world leaders are there, and some over 100-year-old veterans who were there on the actual D-Day, and that was the 6th of June in 1944. James Meredith, who in 1962 became the first African-American to attend the University of Mississippi, is shot by a sniper shortly after beginning a lone civil rights march through the South. Known as the March Against Fear, Meredith had been walking from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi, in an attempt to encourage voter registration by African-Americans in the South. He was a former serviceman in the U.S. Air Force and applied and was accepted to the University of Mississippi, but his admission was revoked when the registrar learned of his race. It was activist Germans Meredith who was shot on today's date in 1966. A day into the march, he was sent to a hospital by a sniper's bullet, and other civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. and Stokely Carmichael, arrived to continue the march on his behalf. It was during the March Against Fear that Carmichael, who was leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, first spoke publicly of Black Power, his concept of militant African-American nationalism. James Meredith later recovered and rejoined the march he had originated, and on the 26th of June, the marchers successfully reached Jackson, Mississippi. Then it was 23 years after its 1948 premiere that the Ed Sullivan Show has its final broadcast on the 6th of June in 1971.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from New York, the Ed Sullivan Show.
For more than 2 decades, Sullivan's variety show was the premier television showcase for entertainers of all stripes, including Bosch Belt comedians, plate-spinning, vaudeville throwbacks, and most significantly, some of the biggest and most current names in rock and roll.
These veterans agree with me that the city...
In its first 8 years of existence, there was no such thing as rock and roll to be featured on the program, originally called Toast of the Town. Yet even its first broadcast made music history when Broadway composers Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II gave the world its first taste of the score from their upcoming musical, South Pacific. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the Ed Sullivan Show that had its aired for the last time on today's date in 1971.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, live from New York, the Ed Sullivan Show.
And then on today's date, in the year 1981, more than 500 passengers are killed when their train plunges into Bagmati River in India. The rail accident, the worst in India to that date, was believed to have been caused when an engineer tried to avoid striking a cow. A 9-car train filled with approximately 1,000 passengers was traveling through the northeastern state of Bihar, about 250 miles from Calcutta. Outside, monsoon-like conditions were battering the region. Extremely hard rains were swelling the rivers and making the tracks slick. As the train approached the bridge over the Bagmati River, a cow crossed the tracks, possibly seeking to avoid harming the cow. The engineer braked too hard and the car slid on the wet rails, and the last 7 cars derailed straight into the river. With the river far above normal levels, the cars sank quickly in the murky waters. Rescue help was hours away, and by the time it arrived, nearly 600 people had lost their lives. After a multi-day search, 286 bodies were recovered, but more than 300 missing people were never found. The best estimate is that close to 600 were killed by the engineer's decision. Cows considered sacred animals according to the Hindu religion. And in a bloody climax to 2 years of fighting between the Indian government and Sikh separatists, Indian army troops fight their way into the besieged Golden Temple compound in Amritsar, the holiest shrine of Sikhism, and kill at least 500 Sikh rebels. Happened on today's date in 1984. More than 100 Indian soldiers and scores of non-belligerent Sikhs also perished in this ferocious gun and artillery battle, which was launched in the early morning hours of the 6th of June. Sikh groups dispute this figure and say thousands died, including a large number of pilgrims who were there for an important Sikh festival. The army also attacked Sikh guerrillas besieged in 36 other temples and religious shrines throughout the state of Punjab. Indian officials hailed the operation as a success and said it broke the back of the Sikh terrorist movement. That happened with the storming of the Golden Temple on the 6th of June in 1984. And on the 6th of June in 1998, the cable network HBO airs the pilot episode of Sex and the City, a new comedy series chronicling the lives and loves of 4 women living in New York City. Darren Star, the creator, was best known at the time for producing the long-running Fox TV series Beverly Hills 90210 and its spin-off Melrose Place. For Sex and the City, he switched course, loosely adapting a book by the same name, compiled from a number of her columns for the New York Observer, and that is the author Candace Bushnell. Sex and the City premiered on HBO on today's date in 1998. And then a second sequel, Sex and the City Part 2, premiered in 2010. A 10-episode HBO Max reboot of the series, and Just Like That, premiered in 2021. Sarah Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, and Kristen Davis reprised their roles. But notably, Kim Cattrall did not. Those were some of the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 6th of June. I have huge thanks going out to the supporters of community radio networks. Big thanks to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, Michaelachi, Ruchi Palace by Michaelachi, Sri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Mystic Mandala, and Flashbrush Productions. Big thanks for their support of community radio networks. Please don't forget that this Friday is the 20th anniversary of the Taste of the Cowboys. It's going to be at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. Also, SABA, the South Asian Business Alliance, having their franchise expo on this Saturday, the 8th of June, from 11 to 1 at the First United Bank in Craig Ranch in McKinney, South Asian Business Alliance. Also on Saturday, the 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning, the BAPS charities invite you to 3111 Olympus Boulevard for the annual In the Joy of Others walk-run to extend support to Irving Cares and MetroCare, two invaluable organizations dedicated to serving the community. A holistic festival this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, both days from 11 to 5, 8th and 9th of June at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. This is brought to you by Mystic Mandala, a life and wellness 2-day festival. And to get a booth or for more information and registration, please call Vijay. His number is 972-750-1419. holisticfestivaloflife.com. On next week, on Thursday, the 13th, Hassan Sumro Entertainment presents Up Close and Personal meeting and a meet and greet with Shahzad Nawaz, happening on Thursday the 13th at the Sheesh Lounge in the Colony. For more information and to sponsor this event, you can call Hassan Sumro at 972-333-4801. Announcing the Immigrant Journey Awards Gala celebrating Immigrant Heritage Month. This is happening on Friday the 14th from 6:30 to 9 at the Communities Foundation of Texas on Caruth Haven in Dallas. Badshah coming into town with his Pagal tour, and that is on Friday the 14th at the Curtis Culwell Center. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Katha Maha Utsav, organized by the Vaishnav Sangh of Dallas on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of this month at the DFW Hindu Temple, the Ekta Mandir in Irving. And a World Meditation Hour on Sunday the 16th from 6:30 to 7:30. As we together make an effort to be angels of peace by spending an hour sending thoughts of healing and peace for the whole world. This is being brought to you by the Brahma Kumaris, happening on Sunday the 16th, 6:30 to 7:30, and you can register at bkdallas.org. A-Cube Media proudly presents Shreya Ghoshal live in concert on Sunday the 16th at the Curtis Culwell Center, and you can get some discounted tickets at solekha.com. We have Yoga for Unity and Well-Being, an International Day of Yoga seminar, Burnout to Balance, a day filled with activities for body, mind, and soul, on the 22nd of June from 8 to 4 at the Collin College Conference Center on Wade Boulevard in Frisco. And the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial of North Texas, in partnership with the Consulate General of India, cordially invites you to International Day of Yoga on Sunday, the 23rd, from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning. It is Yoga for Humanity at the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial Plaza. We do have the Kings returning, free to the public on Saturday, the 29th of June, as a special thanks for the community's support of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. Morton Meyerson is proud to present a free concert featuring the incredible talent of Dallas natives, Kings Return, on Saturday, the 29th of June at 2 p.m. Shankar Ehsaan Loy, live in concert on the 29th of June. This presentation of the legendary trio, you're going to be swept off your feet by Shankar Mahadevan, Ehsaan Nurani, and Loy Mendonca as they set the stage on fire with the electrifying music and soul-stirring melodies, happening on the 29th of this month. And Nan's Vision presents a glamorous night in Dallas with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June at the Grandian Event Center on Parkwood Boulevard. For more information, you can call Nanda Tiwari at 469-305-6836. And of course, the 2020 World Cup continues. This Sunday is the Pakistan-India game in New York. And then Salim Suleiman will be in town on the 3rd of July over that long 4th of July weekend. And in the month of July, the 2024 Texas Super Kings schedule is out. They open their season against the LA Knight Riders on the 5th of July at 7:30 at the Grand Prairie Stadium. Ellen DeGeneres is coming to Dallas on the 10th of July, and on the 14th of July, the grand launch of a cricket academy. Rohit Sharma, one of the modern greats of the game, opening his cricket academy in Dallas, Fort Worth. And this is on the 14th of July. This hitman is coming to Texas. Crick Kingdom, a cricket academy by Rohit Sharma, all set to make its grand debut in Dallas. For more information, you can call Shalu. Her number is 201-245-6299. A carom tournament on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of July. And a program with memories, Yadein, songs of Kishore Kumar, Lata Mangeshkar, and Muhammad Rafi on the 10th of August. Please mark a Wellness and Workplace Conference by the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce on the 22nd of August. And Anand Bazaar, in celebration of India's Independence Day, will be happening at the Frisco Rough Riders on the 31st of August. Please mark all these dates, and we'll have more information coming up for you right here on Community Radio Networks. And for those of you who would like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754. And that's my show for today.